Jack Harrison had always been good with his hands, but he never expected them to save humanity. At 20 years old, he was the youngest maintenance technician at the Earth Defense Academy, spending his days crawling through the guts of training simulators, while cadets and officers walked past without a second glance. That suited him just fine. It gave him plenty of time to study the machines he serviced, learning their rhythms and patterns in ways the technical manuals never covered. The Nixian Empire's arrival changed everything. Their crystalline ships appeared without warning, a constellation of razor-sharp angles that turned Earth's night sky into a glittering nightmare. They came with promises of cultural exchange and technological advancement, but the plasma cannons mounted on their ships told a different story. Jack was elbow-deep in a simulator's neural interface panel when the first attack came. The Academy sirens screamed to life, their wail mixing with the thunder of distant explosions. Through the maintenance bay's viewport, he watched as streams of purple energy lanced down from orbit, cutting through Earth's defensive shields like they were tissue paper. All personnel to emergency stations, the Academy AI announced, its usual calm voice edged with urgency. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jack's hands moved before his mind caught up, sealing the panel and gathering his tools. He was halfway to the maintenance bay's exit when he heard it, the distinctive whine of a Nixian boarding craft's engines, growing louder by the second. The craft punched through the Academy's roof in a shower of metal and concrete, its crystalline surface pulsing with internal light. Jack dove behind a row of deactivated simulators as armored Nixian soldiers poured out, their four-armed forms moving with predatory grace. Secure the simulation data, their leader ordered in heavily accented English. The humans' combat protocols must be analyzed and neutralized. Jack's heart pounded against his ribs as he watched them approach the main computer core. He knew what was stored there, not just training programs, but the sum total of Earth's combat experience, tactical analyses, and defense plans. If the Nixians got their hands on that data, humanity's already slim chances would vanish completely. The maintenance access panel beside him suddenly looked like more than just an escape route. Jack had spent countless hours studying the simulator network, learning how each system connected to the others. He knew there was a backup control node hidden behind that panel, one that could operate the simulators remotely. It was suicide, of course. He had no combat training, no experience beyond what he'd absorbed fixing the machines. But as he watched the Nixian soldiers methodically approaching the computer core, he realized no one else was coming. The Academy's security forces were probably busy with a dozen other breaches just like this one. Jack took a deep breath and pulled up the access panel. His fingers flew across the emergency controls, bringing the simulators online one by one. The Nixians turned at the sound of powering machinery, their weapon arms raising in confusion. That's when Jack activated the neural interface he'd been repairing, but not as it was designed to be used. Instead of connecting to a single simulator, he linked it to all of them simultaneously. The surge of information nearly overwhelmed him. Suddenly, he could see through dozens of camera feeds, control multiple weapon systems, and access every scrap of combat data stored in the system. The simulators came alive, their mechanical arms and testing rigs moving with purpose. The Nixians found themselves surrounded by machines that had been designed to safely train pilots, but were now being repurposed into improvised weapons. Jack's consciousness spread across the network, using maintenance protocols in ways their designers had never intended. The first Nixian went down under a barrage of testing equipment, caught completely off guard. The others opened fire, their energy weapons carving chunks out of the simulators, but failing to stop their advance. Jack kept the pressure on, using his intimate knowledge of the machines to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing damage to vital systems. Through the chaos, he noticed something strange. He was processing the combat data faster than should have been possible, integrating lessons from thousands of training sessions in real time. Each movement he directed became more efficient, each counterattack more precise. The Nixian leader recognized the threat too late. Fall back, they ordered, but Jack had already sealed the boarding craft's access hatch. The remaining aliens found themselves trapped between advancing machines and sealed exits. 5 minutes later, when Academy security finally breached the maintenance bay, they found 8 unconscious Nixian soldiers, a collection of damaged but functional simulators, and a shaking maintenance technician still connected to the neural interface. Commander Elena Torres, head of Academy security, personally helped disconnect Jack from the system. "I've never seen anything like this," she said, studying the combat footage. "How did you know how to fight them?" Jack's hands were still trembling as he packed away his tools. Some habits died hard. "I didn't," he admitted. "I just understood the machines, and they understood the combat data. Everything else just clicked." Elena's expression turned thoughtful. "The Nixians have overrun every defense force that's faced them conventionally," she said. "Maybe it's time we tried something unconventional." She helped Jack to his feet. "How would you like to help us redesign our combat training program?" Jack looked at the unconscious aliens, then at the simulators that had helped him stop them. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt something close to hope. "When do we start?" The Earth Defense Academy Central Training Facility had never seen anything quite like Jack Harrison's teaching methods. 3 months after the maintenance bay incident, he stood before a class of elite pilots, his hands dancing through holographic controls as he explained his unconventional approach to space combat. "Forget everything you know about traditional flight patterns," Jack said, manipulating the simulator's neural interface to display a complex series of maneuvers. "The Nixians expect us to follow standard military doctrine. Their entire battle strategy is built around predicting and countering conventional tactics." Lieutenant Diana Rice, top of her class and vocal skeptic of Jack's methods, raised her hand. "With all due respect, those protocols exist for a reason. You're asking us to abandon centuries of military wisdom based on one lucky encounter." Jack smiled, remembering how he'd had similar doubts before that fateful day. "The Nixians have conquered 12 systems using those same centuries of military wisdom against their defenders. Maybe it's time for something they haven't seen before." He initiated the training sequence, and a holographic display filled with crystalline Nixian warships. "The key isn't just being unpredictable. It's understanding how our technology can be pushed beyond its intended limits. Every system has hidden potential if you know where to look." The doors slid open, and Commander Elena Torres entered with an entourage of stern-faced military officials. Jack recognized Admiral Chen among them, the head of Earth's defense forces. Their presence meant either really good news or really bad news. In his experience, there wasn't much middle ground these days. "Continue with your demonstration, Mr. Harrison," Elena said, but her tight expression told Jack something was wrong. Jack nodded and turned back to his class. "Watch this sequence carefully. It's not about raw speed or power. It's about using every system in ways the enemy won't expect." He interfaced with the simulator, demonstrating a series of maneuvers that had his students gasping. The holographic fighter rolled and twisted in ways that seemed to defy physics, using its own energy emissions as temporary shields, converting waste heat into tactical advantages. It wasn't elegant or by the book, but it was effective. "That's impossible," Diana protested. "The stress would tear the ship apart." "Only if you follow the standard power distribution protocols," Jack explained. "But if you reroute auxiliary systems through secondary channels while maintaining a rotating harmonic frequency." He trailed off as Admiral Chen stepped forward. "Impressive theory, Mr. Harrison. But how soon can you make it practice?" The Admiral's voice was grave. "The Nixian fleet has begun systematic attacks on our outer colonies. New Eden fell this morning." The room went silent. New Eden was one of Earth's strongest colonial positions, protected by state-of-the-art defenses and an experienced garrison. If it had fallen, how? Jack asked, already pulling up tactical data on his console. "They've adapted their strategies," Elena explained. "The Nixians are learning, using variations of their standard tactics. Our conventional defenses couldn't adapt fast enough. Then we need to accelerate the training program, Jack said, but Admiral Chen shook his head. There's no time for a full program. We need pilots ready to implement your methods within 2 weeks. The Nixians are moving faster than we anticipated, and Earth's defensive fleet is stretched thin. Jack studied the faces of his students, the best pilots Earth had to offer, all of them trained in traditional methods that were now proving obsolete. 2 weeks isn't enough time to unlearn old habits and master new ones. Unless, Elena interjected, we use the neural interface system you modified during the maintenance bay incident. Direct neural learning, combined with your understanding of our technology's true capabilities. The room erupted in murmurs. Neural interface training was strictly regulated, used only in small doses to prevent mental strain. What Elena was suggesting was unprecedented. The mental load could be dangerous, Jack warned. When I linked to multiple simulators, I was desperate and didn't have a choice. Doing it deliberately for extended training. We're all desperate now, Admiral Chen said quietly. The Nixians aren't just attacking our colonies, they're systematically dismantling our defense capabilities. If we don't find a way to counter them soon, there won't be anything left to defend. Jack looked at his students again, seeing the mix of fear and determination in their eyes. Diana stood up. I volunteer for the first trial, she said. If Mr. Harrison can do it without formal training, we can learn to do it properly. Others quickly followed her lead, volunteering despite the risks. Jack felt the weight of their trust, their willingness to put their lives in his hands. He turned to the tactical display, studying the footage from New Eden's fall. The Nixian ships moved with their usual precision, but he could see subtle variations in their patterns. They were indeed adapting. All right, he said finally, but we do this my way. No interference from the traditional command structure. No limitations based on standard protocols. If we're going to teach our pilots to think outside the box, the whole training program needs to operate outside it too. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. You have full autonomy, Mr. Harrison. Whatever you need to prepare our pilots, you'll have it. Just remember, 2 weeks until the next wave of attacks. Make them count. Jack's hands moved across the console, already modifying the neural interface protocols. We'll start with the basics, teaching your bodies to understand the machines the way I do. After that, he smiled grimly. After that, we're going to rewrite everything the Nixians think they know about human combat capabilities. As his students prepared for their first enhanced neural training session, Jack couldn't help but wonder if he was about to create humanity's greatest defense force or burn out the minds of Earth's best pilots. Either way, they were committed now. The next 2 weeks would determine not just the success of his program, but quite possibly the survival of the human race. The modified simulators hummed to life around them, their neural interfaces glowing with promising potential. It was time to show the Nixians that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in following rules. It was in knowing exactly how to break them. The hidden network. The screams started during the 3rd day of enhanced neural training. Jack rushed into the simulation chamber to find Diana Reyes convulsing in her pod, her neural readings spiking dangerously. As he worked to disconnect her, the holographic displays around them flickered with strange patterns. Not the usual Nixian battle scenarios, but something else entirely. I saw them, Diana gasped once she was stable. Not just their ships, their networks, their communication patterns. It's all connected, Jack. The Nixian fleet, it's not just a military force. It's a hive. Before Jack could process this revelation, his personal console chimed with an encrypted message. The sender was unknown, but the content made his blood run cold. You're seeing it too, aren't you? The patterns beneath the patterns. We need to meet. Docking Bay 17, midnight. Come alone. Admiral Chen had given him full autonomy, but Jack knew this wasn't what he'd had in mind. Still, Diana's vision coupled with this mysterious message was too significant to ignore. As midnight approached, He made his way through the Academy's shadowy corridors to the rarely used docking bay. A single ship waited there, its design neither human nor Nixian. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and graceful, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors in the dim light. Jack recognized the species from intelligence briefings. A Solarian, from one of the first worlds conquered by the Nixian Empire. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality, "and I represent what you might call the Resistance." "There's resistance within the Empire?" Jack asked, keeping his distance. Lyra's skin rippled with patterns of light. "More than they know. Your neural training program. It's accidentally tapped into something the Nixians have kept hidden for centuries. Their ships aren't just connected. They're part of a vast psychic network. It's how they coordinate so perfectly, how they adapt so quickly." Jack thought about Diana's vision, about the strange patterns he'd seen in the neural data. "And you're saying we can access this network?" "Not just access it," Lyra said, producing a small crystalline device. "With the right modifications to your neural interface system, we could disrupt it. But we need your help." The device pulsed with an inner light that matched the patterns Jack had seen in the simulator. "Why me?" "Because you already think differently. The way you reprogram those simulators, how you're teaching your pilots to break conventional patterns, you understand instinctively what we've spent years trying to explain to others. The Nixians' greatest weakness is their reliance on predictable systems." Jack studied the device. "If what you're saying is true, this could change everything." The attack came sooner than expected. Jack was calibrating neural interfaces when the alarm screamed to life. Diana burst into the lab, her face pale. "They're here, a full Nixian battle fleet. They've jumped in right on top of Earth's orbital defenses." Through the Academy's windows, the sky blazed with crystalline ships, their formations perfect and deadly. But this time, Earth was ready. Jack's modified training program had prepared 30 pilots, each now intimately connected to their ships in ways the Nixians had never seen. "All units, initiate pattern disruption protocols," Jack commanded through the neural network. Diana led the first wave of fighters, their movements deliberately chaotic, unpredictable. The Nixian fleet responded with their usual precision, exactly as planned. As the battle unfolded, Jack coordinated with Lyra's resistance network. Hidden transmitters activated throughout the Nixian fleet, broadcasting signals that interfered with their psychic coordination. The effect was subtle at first, then dramatically apparent as their perfect formations began to waver. But the Nixians hadn't conquered half the galaxy by being unprepared. Their flagship launched a new weapon, a massive energy pulse that threatened to overwhelm Earth's defenses. Jack watched in horror as the first defensive line crumbled. "They're adapting too quickly," Diana reported, her ship narrowly avoiding a crystalline blade of energy. "We need something more." Jack made a decision that would either save Earth or doom it. He initialized the full neural interface network, connecting not just the pilots but every compatible system in Earth's defense grid. The strain nearly overwhelmed him, but through the chaos, he saw the pattern. The one weakness in the Nixians' perfect system. "Everyone, link up," he commanded. "Don't fight the patterns. Become the chaos they fear." Part 5. Liberation's dawn. The battle for Earth became a war of patterns, the rigid, crystalline structure of Nixian control against the wild, adaptive nature of human consciousness. Through their neural links, Earth's defenders moved as one, yet each acting independently, creating a symphony of controlled chaos that the Nixian system couldn't predict. Diana led a desperate attack on the flagship, her squadron moving in ways that defied both physics and logic. The Nixian commanders, unable to compute effective responses to such randomness, began making mistakes. Their perfect network, faced with true unpredictability, started to fracture. Jack, monitoring the battle through the neural interface, spotted the critical moment. "Now, Lyra, trigger the cascade." Throughout the Nixian fleet, sleeper programs activated. The Resistance's hidden network surged to life, carrying not orders but pure chaos. human thoughts, emotions, and randomness flooding the rigid Nixian systems. Ships began breaking formation, their crews suddenly free from the Empire's mental control. The Nixian flagship, realizing what was happening, attempted one final, devastating attack. But Diana was ready. Her squadron, moving with impossible coordination yet complete unpredictability, pierced the flagship's defenses. Their weapons found the ship's crystal heart, its central network node. The explosion cascaded through the Nixian fleet's psychic network. Ships stopped in mid-attack, their crews experiencing true freedom for the first time in generations. The rigid patterns of control shattered, replaced by something new, individual choice. As the battle ended, Jack received transmissions from across the galaxy. Other worlds, seeing the Nixian control network fall, rose up against their oppressors. The Empire, built on perfect control and prediction, couldn't survive the introduction of true chaos and freedom. Diana's voice crackled through the neural link. "We did it, Jack. We actually did it." Jack looked at the tactical display, watching as former Nixian ships began broadcasting surrender signals. Lyra's resistance members emerged from hiding, coordinating with Earth forces to secure the fleet. The victory felt almost surreal. Commander Elena Torres found him in the neural interface chamber, still processing the battle data. "The Joint Chiefs want to know how you knew this would work," she said. Jack smiled, thinking of all the hours spent studying patterns in the maintenance bay, learning how systems really worked beyond their intended purposes. Sometimes the best solutions come from understanding not just how things work, but how they could work differently. The Nixians built their empire on predictability. We won by embracing the opposite. In the days that followed, Earth became a beacon for the liberated worlds. The neural interface technology, combined with the lessons learned from the Resistance, offered a new way forward. Not rigid control, but collaborative chaos, each world and species free to find its own path while working together. Diana, promoted to commander of Earth's new defense force, found Jack in his old maintenance bay. "They're calling you the architect of liberation," she said. "There's talk of you heading up a new academy, teaching these methods to others." Jack ran his hand along a simulator's control panel, remembering where it all began. "Maybe," he said. "But first, I want to understand more about these patterns we've discovered. There's so much more to learn about how different systems and different species can work together." The galaxy was changing, transforming from an empire of crystal and control into something new, something unpredictable, chaotic, and free. And it all started because one maintenance technician dared to look at things differently. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, the stars shone brighter somehow, as if celebrating their own liberation. Humanity had not only survived, but had shown the galaxy a new way forward. Not through perfect order, but through the beautiful unpredictability of free will. The end.